There's a youth movement underway in Major League Baseball.
Gone, goodbye! It's a Harper homer! Mike Trout has hit for the cycle tonight.
Take that baby bye-bye, Manny Machado.
But long before we knew the names Harper, Machado, and Trout, there was a teenager who put up better numbers than any of today's young phenoms. And he was known to many simply as Tony C.
Tony, in this ball game, has fouled to the catcher, singled to center, and reached second in the seventh on a two-base throwing error by Fregosi, who took his ground ball and threw it into the Boston dugout. 5-4, California. Here's the pitch. Line for left field deep, and it is high up.
He was a fearless hitter.
This kid was something special.
He was something special. He really was.
If I've ever seen one player that I had the opportunity to play with that was destined for the Hall of Fame, it was Tony.
He was the perfect human being, good-looking, tall guy with great ability and just cocky enough to be cool.
Self-confidence bubbled out of him. I've never seen anybody so positive that he should get a hit every time he went to the plate as Tony.
If the pitcher got him out, he thought the pitcher was lucky to get him out.
He was just someone you just watched. And that's the way the people, they came and they just wanted to watch him. He could hit any pitch. You couldn't throw a fastball by him, and yet you could throw him a great breaking ball and he could hit it.
Tony is maybe the most fearless hitter I have ever seen, ever.
MLB Network Radio presents Fearless, the Tony C. story.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jerry Trupiano with Red Sox legend Rico Petrocelli. During the next 2 hours, we'll take you inside the brief but spectacular career of Tony Conigliaro, a hometown hero whose time in the big leagues was cut short due to one horrific moment. Rico, you played with Tony C. What do you remember most about him?
Well, the first time I saw Tony was down in Florida. I had come back from the big league camp, my first big league camp, and I met Tony and Mike Ryan. They were from, Massachusetts. I was from New York, and so, it was close enough. I don't recall any players from New York there, so I kind of took to Tony. As far as his playing is concerned, on the field, at that time, he was not really, didn't really stand out. He would, in batting practice, he hit some long fly balls, balls over the fence, but nothing real special at that time.
Everybody talks about Tony C's confidence. Did you sense that immediately?
Not really. He was, at least not to us. I think it was all new to him, and he certainly wanted to play for the Red Sox in his hometown, but wasn't sure, exactly what was going to happen. First time being away from home. I think when I got to be friends with him down there and Mike Ryan, we spent a lot of time together, and he was just a regular, just a 17-year-old kid who was loved to play the game, wanted to do well, but was interested in other things, fishing. He would go to dances down there, and we were all single, so we all went to dances down in Florida, and I guess Tony dated a couple of girls there, and it was typical.
Now you knew Tony very early on in his professional career, and you knew him to the until the unfortunate end of his life. Your overall impressions of Tony Conigliaro, the man?
I think he was one of the most courageous guys that I've ever met. Just incredible at the plate. He was fearless, but he got hit in the arm, in the back, and broke bones and just kept coming back, just waited to come back, and it was as if he never left. He could hit, great RBI guy, and then, of course, with the injury, that comeback was incredible. I just said, this guy is something special.
Tony Conigliaro certainly had an impact not only in Boston, but throughout baseball. We'll hear from friends, teammates, and the family of Tony C. as we learn more about the player and singer on and off the field. But for now, we start at the very beginning, as Tony Conigliaro was a Boston legend long before he became a Red Sox legend. Anthony Richard Conigliaro was born on January 7, 1945 in Revere, Massachusetts, less than 10 miles from Fenway Park. He attended St. Mary's High School in Lynn. It was there where he drew the attention of Major League Baseball scouts. Mike Ryan, also a Massachusetts native, was the Red Sox catcher from 1964 through 1967. He came up through the minors with Tony C. and remembered hearing about the young outfielder before he was even drafted.
I knew of him. You know, he was in the Boston papers quite regularly, and from what I read, I said, they got something good here, and eventually, you know, it proved out to be. And he was something, I'll tell you. He was a fun guy. And
a lot of people misunderstood him. You know, a lot of people thought when he got to the big leagues he was cocky. You know, but we know him, of course, as a teammate and friend, and he had a dry sense of humor. Like you said, he made you laugh. I mean, that same thing with me. You couldn't help it.
Yeah, he was. He was. He was fun to be around. He had a dry sense of humor, and you know, when he got hot quick too, and he had a little temper. He, which was fine, and we all do, but. He was just fun. You know, he was fun. He was a fun kid. He loved life. He loved to eat. He loved girls. He just loved everything. You know, he was a good guy.
Mike, where'd you first meet Tony? I mean, you guys were both from Massachusetts, right? So you didn't know each other, did you? When you played?
I never met him. It was 1962, and we both got invited down to. He had just signed, and we both got invited down to the instructional league in Bradenton. Mm-hmm. I had just played my second year of pro ball, and this was going to be Tony's first experience, and they wanted him to get a little taste of professional baseball before his first year. So we flew down to Florida together, and that was the first time we met, and it was an enjoyable ride. It got a little rough, and I'm not a real good flyer, and before I could get that little throw-up bag, I let it go, and right on Tony's new suit.
And then you guys roomed together. I wonder if he put up a little squawk about that.
Well, you know what? He gave me a look that I can still see today, and the madder he got at me, the more I laughed, and I couldn't keep a straight face. And you know what? I laughed so hard I forgot I was sick.
One quality Tony C. never lacked was confidence. In an interview with Rico, Tony's youngest brother, Richie Conigliaro, said his brother knew he was destined to play in the big leagues. He just had to convince everyone else he was ready.
I think he always knew in his own mind. But I think when everyone else knew was when they were touting this guy called Danny Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
Who was very, very, the scouts from everywhere after this guy. And they ended up facing each other in a game. Yeah. And Tony was saying, good, send him to me. And like, he had a home run, a couple of doubles off this guy. And after that, I think pretty much not only our family, but the scouts woke up and said, well, if he can hit this guy, he can pretty much hit anybody. So that's pretty much when we thought. I mean, he was a skinny guy. I mean, you know, Tony, he's 165 pounds at 6'3".
Yeah. Yeah, wiry, but actually he had a perfect body for to be an athlete. It was incredible. All you guys did, you and Billy as well.
Tony C. may have known he was ready to be in the big leagues, but he didn't know if he would join his hometown team, as Rico and Richie Conigliaro explained.
You mentioned the scouts coming in to see him. They were interested. And his book, I loved it. It came out in 1970 with Jack Zanger, Seeing It Through, the story of a comeback. And Tony mentions that the scouts came over, and Danny Murphy, you mentioned, he got $125,000. Yeah. Bob Gindin got $125,000. Tony Horton from California.
Right, I remember Tony.
Who would be Tony's roommate, signed with the Red Sox for $125,000. So he was, in the book he said, he and your dad were said, all right, 125, yeah, we could do that. The scouts came in.
Didn't turn out that way.
Didn't turn out that way. Somebody, I think they offered him $10,000. They said, you're joking?
It was like a very, very, very shocking night.
Yeah.
It really was. Because
I know it.
I know that what happened was that the Red Sox didn't even offer the most.
No.
The Orioles did. But we're talking, I think, 20 and 25.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was it.
Finally took it, and but that had to be a big thrill. I mean, I'm thinking back myself with New York. I'm from New York, and saying, it would have been nice to sign with the Yankees or the Mets, hometown. But the family must have been ecstatic when he signed with the Red Sox. Here's your hometown team.
Well, yeah, I think if it was maybe 20 the Red Sox offered and Orioles offered 100,
Yeah.
I don't think he would have seen Boston.
Right, yeah. Well, that's true.
Because it was that close.
Yeah.
You know, it was a no-brainer because our house was exactly 4.1 miles from the park.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's pretty close.
Yeah, you could walk there, really.
Yeah, East Boston to Fenway.
Yeah, it was.
So that was the decision for that, you know.
That was something. I remember. Well, I was talking to him and reading the book, and you know, God, Tony Horton was the big guy. The Red Sox thought he was going to be the guy in the future. You know, first baseman, maybe an outfielder, and Tony kind of came on slow. He goes to Wellsville his first year. I think, according to the book, that he didn't start out too well. You recall going there, visiting to Wellsville?
Yeah.
Nice town, huh?
Oh, it was brutal. My family, my mother, my father, and myself drove to Wellsville, which was, I don't know, it seemed like 100 hours. We drove there, and it was like you blink your eyes and you're out of the town. It was probably the most boring town. We spent one night there. We said, Tony, we love you, man. We can't take this. And we got back in the car and left.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that bad. It really was. So,
it's probably built up now, Rich. You know.
Well, maybe I'm sure it's built up now to two sets of lights instead of one.
Yeah.
But it was brutal.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he didn't start off too well, but he ended up doing fairly well. You know, hitting
360 something, 364 or something like that.
But I think the main thing, Rico, was Scottsdale. Getting invited to Scottsdale was one thing, but in his opinion, and in Johnny Pesky's opinion, who happened to be our neighbor, who we got to talk to a lot, you know, because he was our neighbor, we lived on the same street, was one hit he had in Scottsdale that pretty much said, if he can do that, man, this kid's, you know, he's got to be ready.
Once he signed with the Red Sox, it didn't take long for Tony C. to prove he belonged.
He loved being a major league ball player.
Oh, yeah.
Loved everything about it.
Up next on Fearless, the Tony C. story, Conigliaro makes an immediate impact on the Red Sox at the age of 19.
He would have hit several hundred home runs for sure, you know. You know, I don't know. He was the fastest to 100 in history, I guess, and you know, he'd have hit his 30 to 40 home runs a year probably for most of his career, I think.
And later, an ominous warning from another Red Sox legend.
I remember one guy telling, I don't know if it was Tony or the organization, and that was number 9, Ted Williams. Ted told the Red Sox, have him move off or he's going to get hit. Going to get hit again. He's going to get hit.
Fearless, the Tony C. story on MLB Network Radio will continue. We return to Fearless, the Tony C. story on MLB Network Radio.
You know, I'll never forget, you guys came into Cleveland before, I think I'd already been traded over to the Red Sox, and Sam McDowell was pitching, and you know, in that era, Sam had tremendous stuff, you know that.
Yeah.
And Tony's before the game, you know, he's saying, you know, I'm gonna hit 9 miles off this guy, and I'm sitting there thinking, is this guy crazy? And Sam's throwing 100 miles an hour and a
According to his former teammate Mike Ryan, Tony struggled initially.
Well, the first time I saw him, he was 17 years old. We're down in the instructional league, and, you know, you get your best ball players, the best prospects from every organization down there, and he was a little overmatched. You know, he was still a skinny kid. I mean, there was nothing to him. If you weighed 170 pounds, just that.
That's right, yeah.
And the next time I saw him, you know, he had bulked up pretty good. He was turning into a man now, and he had that great year at Wellsville, and, of course, the following years in the big leagues. So, you know, he came on quick.
So quick, in fact, that he was invited to the Red Sox big league camp in Scottsdale the next spring. And once he was there, he made an immediate impression on his soon-to-be teammates, including Rico Petrocelli.
I remember it. I remember it vividly. Scottsdale, where Tony and Tony Horton roomed together, as I mentioned earlier. Two young guys, 18, 19 years old, and were not shy, went out, had a good time, and they're both good-looking guys, I mean, athletes. And they were the talk of the town. Most of the talk was from girls, because they forget it, Right. And so that was interesting there. He made that team, 19 years old, right? Half a year of minor league ball. He hit the ball so hard, Rich, that spring, and he hit a ball over the center field fence against Gary Bell in Scottsdale. The fence was 25, 30 feet high, and he cleared that thing. Yeah. Oh, my God.
Bell also remembers that very, very long ball.
You know, he was a rookie, and I said, I need to help the young guy out. And
Right, yeah.
And he killed a mule about 3 blocks down the street. you know who reminded me of that all the time when he was alive was Raditz.
Raditz, I know. That was
ball, Rico, that ball should have been caught, man.
Yeah.
Yep, that was a bomb. He never got me again, though. I remembered it.
How far did that fateful home run travel? Richie Conigliaro remembers how a local newspaper described it.
In the papers the next day, I have a copy of that. It was on the front page. It had an arrow where the ball went in the air, 572 feet.
Yeah.
And after that, and that's what Johnny Pesky had said to us. He said, I got to bring this guy back with us, even though I think it was Higgins. I'm not
Mike
sure.
Mike Higgins, yes.
Didn't want him.
No.
Nobody wanted him yet. He wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
But Pesky made him come back. I guess he had some pull, and the rest is history from there.
I mean, that was the beginning of the Red Sox resurgence in bringing up the young people.
Right.
Because Tony opened the door. Mike Higgins did not, and Billy Herman, who became the manager, did not want the young guys. They liked the veteran players, whatever the reason was. They didn't like the young guys.
Right.
Tony comes in, hits 24 home runs his first year. I mean, everybody's excited, and now that opened their eyes.
Tony C's power would soon be on display for all to see. His impact on the Red Sox was immediate. In just his second major league game, he homered on the very first pitch of his first at-bat at Fenway Park. Teammates like Mike Andrews could see Tony was destined for greatness.
He had it all. I mean, he could run, he could field. His singing was a little suspect, but we'll let that go.
We'll tell you about the singing later. As far as Tony's hitting, it was hard not to be impressed, no matter who you were playing for.
Tony was something special. He really was.
Ken Hawk Harrelson played against Tony before replacing him in the lineup after Conigliaro's devastating injury in 1967. He told us his impressions from afar and up close.
He was a very unusual guy. When I played against him, I couldn't stand him, and a lot of guys couldn't. Yeah. And then when I got to Boston and put that Red Sox uniform on and got to know Tony, I got to love him. He was just a terrific guy, and it was a terrific family.
From an opponent's standpoint, what was it about Tony C that turned guys off?
Because he was so good, he beat you, and he was cocky. When I say cocky, he was very confident, and he was 6'4", 220 pounds with about a 32-inch waist, one of the best-looking guys around, and a great fastball hitter, great high fastball hitter. And the fans there just loved him, and as they should have. A local boy, he was going to be a superstar for many years to come.
Fans weren't the only ones who loved Tony C. His teammates, like Andrews, did as well.
I just have the fondest memories of Tony because, in my opinion, and I've said this forever, if I've ever seen one player that I had the opportunity to play with that was destined for the Hall of Fame, it was Tony. And certainly he has too. But, Tony had it all, and he would have been in the Hall of Fame had he not, had all of everything that's happened to him along the way. But He was just a very special player. One of the most self-confidence, I think, is Rico is something I bubbled out of him. I've never seen anybody so positive that he should get a hit every time he went to the plate as Tony did, and never thought, I don't care how tough the pitcher was. I wish he could have got up against Bob Gibson because, I mean, he just didn't give in. Of course, Rico, Tony, and we all had the Bobby Dorr type idea of swinging down on the ball, and I used to just love to talk to Tony about hitting, you know, because I was trying to emulate him as best I could, and that never came close, by the way, but at least I was trying, and you know, it was just fun all the times we sat and talked about hitting.
Conigliaro hit 24 home runs as a 19-year-old rookie, and then followed that up with 32 home runs in his sophomore season. That made him the youngest home run champion in American League history. By 1967, his fourth season, Conigliaro had become the youngest player in American League history to reach the 100 home run milestone, two records that still stand today. Even the splendid Splinter himself was impressed.
Ted Williams put it the best. He said that Tony Conigliaro was the greatest young home run hitter he ever saw.
As his power numbers increased, everyone seemed to notice one specific aspect of Conigliaro's approach at the plate.
Man, he was so aggressive, and he hung out over the plate. I mean, his arms were almost in the strike zone, weren't they, Rico?
Oh, they were, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes he even moved closer to the plate when, you know, he thought that they were going to pitch him outside.
Yeah.
Consistently outside, keep the ball away from him, and he'd get up close. Yeah.
I'm really surprised that he wasn't hit more than that, you know, because, gosh, he was right there. If you pitched inside, you know, he had to get hit.
Oh, absolutely. He did break a couple of bones in one of his arm, his back at one time, and he never moved.
And I think everybody in the major leagues tried to jam him and trying to get him to look for the ball inside. And once you did that, you tried to go breaking pitches away. But you certainly had to go inside on him because he could rake the ball anywhere from the middle of the plate away, especially with that short fence and thin line.
He never would give in to a pitcher, so therefore he would stand on the plate and wait till the last minute. And he got hit a lot. I think he had a few broken bones, but he just would. I don't want to say he froze there. I think it was more determined not to give a pitcher an inch.
He was a fearless hitter. Now I was on deck a lot of times, hit after him, and man alive, he'd be in there, that head looking at the pitcher. Nobody could throw a fastball by him. I don't care who would throw today, and of course we don't know because you know, they're not facing each other. But Tony hit. Baltimore came with some kid, boy, he could throw. He had to be 97, 98. Yeah. Tony said, fastball. So if you threw a fastball in on Tony for a ball, he'd take it or, you know, let it go or miss it.
Right.
2 inches over on the corner,
yeah,
he'd smoke you up in the anywhere.
Right.
So this kid comes in and he's blowing everybody away. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
And he throws Tony a fastball in for a strike. That ball shot out of Fenway over the screen so fast. I almost, where is it? It was incredible. He comes around, he says, nobody, okay, they're not going to get a fastball by me.
But perhaps nobody summed up Tony C's approach at the plate better than Harrelson.
Most guys in baseball have some fear at the plate. What they do, though, is they learn how to compensate for it. That's the reason they become good major league players. Tony is maybe the most fearless hitter I have ever seen, ever. Yep. And he would stand there, and if you threw it his arm, that's where you hit him. Now, if you threw it his head, he'd get out of the way of that if he could. But he just didn't bite. Once he got in there with that wide stance and sight closed and those arms held high, and I saw him. We had one of our pitchers throw at him one day, threw it behind his head, and Tony didn't even move. He looked after the guy and went, "Pooh!" Spit at him. Yeah. And that's the way Tony was. You know, he just was not afraid up there, and guys knew that, and he was a very unusual guy.
That fearless approach helped make Tony Conigliaro a star, but it would also lead to the defining moment of his career.
I think in my career, from a player standpoint, it was the greatest tragedy that I ever encountered.
Up next, Boston's impossible dream season turns into a very real nightmare for Tony C.
in my opinion, it ended everything, including his life. I believe it had something to do with that, too.
You're listening to Fearless, the Tony C. Story on MLB Network Radio. Before Big Poppy's October heroics.
Swinging a high deep drive into right field. That one's stalled to the right. Hunter on the move, racing back. It's over his head. It's gone. It's into the bullpen. This game is tied. This game is tied. David Ortiz. David Ortiz. David Ortiz.
Before Brady's fourth quarter comeback.
Tom Brady, who calls out the plays with the Patriots trailing by 3. Sets up with a throw to the right side. Catch made by Edelman. Prince to the end zone. And he runs it past the 5. He drives to the end zone. Touchdown. And the lead for the Patriots. Tom Brady with his 351st touchdown pass.
Even before Bird and Orr, Boston had Tony Conigliaro.
He was so popular in Boston. He owned Boston, he owned New England, and he would have really owned them if he'd have stayed around.
We return to Fearless, the Tony C. Story on MLB Network Radio. Here's Jerry Trupiano.
The year was 1967, and nearly 100 games into his fourth season, Tony Conigliaro was riding high. The impossible dream Red Sox were improbably fighting for the American League pennant, and Tony C. had 20 home runs and had just been named an All-Star for the first time. Despite all of the success, as Rico Petrocelli explains, the greatest Red Sox hitter of all time was concerned.
I remember one guy telling, I don't know if it was Tony or the organization, and that was number 9, Ted Williams. Ted told the Red Sox, have him move off or he's going to get hit.
I remember that.
Going to get hit again. He's going to get hit. Yeah, and Tony was not that kind of hitter.
Yeah.
He had to be on the plate. He could hit a low and away slider out to left field. That's how close. And then you think you could pitch him in? His elbows were on the inside corner of the plate. No way. He would crush that ball. Get his hands inside. He was so strong.
That strength was about to be tested. Petrocelli describes the day that changed everything for Tony Conigliaro.
It happened August 18th. We're at home, Fenway Park, playing the Angels. Jack Hamilton's the pitcher. Jack is got a really good fastball, pretty good curve. And we heard, we thought maybe this guy was like to brush people back. So he had kind of a reputation. Knew he threw a spitball because his ball sunk when it was good. It sunk like a foot. And comes inside the Tony, and I'm on deck. And from the side view, you could see the ball getting closer, and Tony's not moving. And then all of a sudden, watch out, he turns around and bang, right in the side. And, oh, man, he went down. I was so frightened. I thought it was right in the eye, square in the eye. I said, he's going to go blind in that eye. That's the first thing I thought of. And then when I got close to him, I saw that side of his face start to blow up. It's just like a balloon. Oh, my God. So I didn't know what the hell to do. I loosened his belt and said, Tony, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right.
For those who were there, like Petrocelli, it was a scene they would never forget. Buck Rogers was behind the plate for the Angels that night.
Everybody tried to pitch Tony in, and we tried to pitch him in, and Jack Hamilton threw the ball inside. In fact, Tony's head was actually over the inside corner. And he'd draw his head back. He just kind of flinched that night, and the ball sailed in on him, and it sounded like a pumpkin. So it wasn't a good sound. It wasn't good watching him fall to the ground or anything like that.
Buck, you mentioned that Tony stood right on the plate, and you're right. Sometimes his head was over the inside corner. But I thought from playing, with him all those years that he had that one blind spot inside. And I don't know if every hitter has that, whether it's outside or inside. You see when a guy argues, the ball, would be in the outside corner, and the guy really, or the hitter complains to the umpire, and strike 3. That was way outside, and yet it was a strike. Sometimes I think it's a blind spot. I think Tony had that. He could hit a ball for a strike on the corner and the inside part of the plate, but coming in 2-3 inches, I thought he just did not was not able to get away from the ball. He got hit a few other times and broke an arm and broke his back, something in his back too. He had a fracture, so he had a rough time getting out of the way of those particular pitches, and that's what probably happened that night.
Well, I'm not going to say he froze, but because the ball did sail on him, and but he instead of really moving his head back, he just kind of turned his head, and the ball sailed in on him. So I mean, his like I said, the ball was almost on the inside corner, high, but it was almost on the inside part of the plate if you'd have brought it down about a foot and a half.
Yeah.
So I do think he did have a blind spot, but we tried to keep him waist high inside, and waist high or above, but stayed inside on it.
Now, I was on deck, Buck, and I ran over there. Tony was face down at the time and tried to move him on his back, to see what it was like. And geez, when he did, it just was swelled up, just like blowing up a balloon. It
was ugly. I took one look at him, and I had the same impression you did. I got the same look that you did, and it wasn't pretty.
Richie Conigliaro, Tony's youngest brother, was in the stands that night. He shared his memories with Rico.
He pretty much could have died and almost did die.
I know it.
Maybe a centimeter here or there.
Yeah.
But what happened was, and I watched it as much as you did, is that ball just seemed to follow him.
Yes.
It just tailed. He did move back, but it just followed him.
Yeah.
And again, with the no flaps then.
That's right. It's another.
It might have helped. It might have helped. You know?
Yeah.
And that might have had something to do with them putting flaps on helmets.
It was actually. They did start putting the side flaps and then eventually, both flaps. But it might have helped. Now you and was it you, your mom and dad? I don't know if Billy had signed. I think he wasn't away in the minor leagues at the time. But you went into the clubhouse.
It was my mother, my father, and myself.
Yeah, Doc Tierney.
Doc Tierney, and jumped on the field.
Yeah.
Down next to the dugout with that gate open. We came down on the field, and you were right there, and when they put him on the stretcher, and actually his face was just was gone. His left side of his face was like a big swollen. Couldn't even recognize him. And they brought him to Santa Maria Hospital, and they did put him on the critical list.
They did.
He was on the critical list for 3 days. Where they told us we don't know if he's going to survive, the blood clot to the brain and all this stuff. So we didn't know what happened with that. But as far as baseball, that was over. And I have no idea how he ever got back in the batter's box.
Sal, your dad, how was he? Was he always seemed calm and collected in tough situations, but he must have been really nervous.
You know what? He was amazing. As and my mother too. They were like not the most religious people, but they believed that what was going to happen was going to happen. I mean, that's the way it was meant to be. Yeah. And that went on along even after his other tragedy in later years. But it did take a toll on my dad. He died very young.
Yeah.
And I think it was a lot to do with the situation with his son.
Sure, tremendous.
It really was.
For the fans in attendance and the players in the Red Sox dugout, there was one lingering question: did Jack Hamilton hit Tony C on purpose?
It's funny because later on in my career, I ended up rooming with Jack Hamilton, the guy that hit Tony.
Gary Bell started for the Red Sox that night. What he had to say about that fateful pitch next on Fearless, the Tony C story.
I think the stadium, the fans would like in shock. When somebody gets hit in the head, it's, oh my God, just waiting. Everyone was looking at Tony. I was right there. I could see what was happening to him, his side of his face. And we got mad. I think we were mad, but not to retaliate,
Welcome back to Fearless, the Tony C. story. I'm Jerry Trupiano. Rico Petrocelli was in the on-deck circle when Tony Conigliaro was hit in the face by a Jack Hamilton pitch. But Petrocelli and some of his teammates that night told us they don't believe Hamilton was trying to hit Tony C. on purpose. Boston's starting pitcher that night, Gary Bell, says there were other factors involved.
It's funny because later on in my career, I ended up rooming with Jack Hamilton, the guy that hit Tony.
Did you guys ever talk about that?
Yeah, we did, and actually it was a spitball. He loaded it up, and it just got away from him.
Clear something up for me. I always thought, when guys loaded the ball up, it was to make it go down or break away from a hitter. But if Hamilton hit Tony C. with a spitball, was it just the idea of if you load the pitch up, you don't know where it's going, or am I wrong?
I don't think you can control it. 99% of the time it goes down, because they hold the ball on the slick part of the ball. Of course, I never threw one of those, so I didn't know exactly how to do it. Should have thrown more of them. But the ball most of the time will dive and will go down.
Well, yeah, and that's right. It's not an easy pitch to throw. Not everybody can throw it. It's
well, you just lick your fingers and put it on the slick part of the ball and throw it like a normal fastball, and that if you got one, it goes down. If you don't, it goes out.
Yeah, that's right.
Gary, as I mentioned, you were the starting pitcher, the winning pitcher that night, and later on you mentioned you had room with Jack Hamilton. But take us back to that night, because I think the fans would want to know. Did the guys think it was done on purpose, and was there ever any talk of retaliation, or what was being said in the dugout?
I don't recall them, thinking it was intentional. I don't think it was. Obviously, after rooming with Jack and finding out what he threw, if you're going to hit somebody, you hit them with a fastball,
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, you could brush guys back off the plate. It was just standard procedure, and. If you got hit, you got hit, and and the hitters never ran to the mound in those days, and everybody was mad and upset about it, but
yeah,
I don't think it was intentional. Well, Jack's a good guy, he really is.
Red Sox catcher Mike Ryan wasn't sure.
I think like a lot of us, it was the sound, the sound when it hit that helmet in his head, in his eye, it seemed like it was a sickening sound, and down he went and. Because Rico was the first one there, and I was close behind. But you just, what? I looked at Tony, and then I looked at Hamilton, and I looked at Tony, and I looked at Hamilton. I didn't think it was on purpose, but who knows? It's tough to throw the spitter. It's tough to control the spitter. If that was the pitch, then who knows? I'll never know, and Hamilton probably is the only guy, but he had enough nerve or guts to go to the hospital the next day to see Tony, and I tip my hat to him for that. So maybe it wasn't intentional. I'll never know, but it was a terrible, terrible sound. I can still hear it.
Well, you went up to the hospital to see him, and he had that the eye was black, had blood in it. No, he was. Especially in his book, he talked about it, about being hit, and then his feelings afterwards. He was so afraid that he would never play baseball again. That was his biggest fear. Couldn't see out of the eye, and that was his big concern. I know you went up there. I went up there. Of course, his family. Did he talk to you about that at all? To give you any indication how afraid he was?
You know what? The time I went up there, they wouldn't let me in. It was only for family only. And as I left the hospital, and I turned around and I looked back, and I saw that, and I said, if I can jump up and grab that thing, and it's on a big spring, and the final floor would drop down to the level of the ground. I said, I can get up there, and I jumped up, and I went up to the third floor, I believe he was on, and I was just hoping the door would be open, and I went, and I started yelling, Tony, then. Because the nuns come running at me, and how'd you get in here? You're not supposed to be in here. And then I hear Tony's voice in the background. He's going, "Hey, Romy, is that you?" So he sounded a little happy, like to hear me, I guess. But
absolutely,
I talked the nuns into letting me go in just to say hi to him, and we talked, and You know what? He was in good spirits. He didn't talk about the downside. He didn't talk about his career being over. He was just kind of happy to see somebody, I guess. And you know, and I kind of kidded with him. I said, "I got the beer and 2 chicks downstairs. Let's go." And the one nun kicked me in the shin. That's enough of that.
Buck Rogers, who was the Angels catcher that night, insists Hamilton was not trying to hit Conigliaro.
That was the farthest thing from the truth, that he was trying to hit him. He was trying to pitch him inside like everybody else, and we pitched him inside. But we pitched a lot of guys inside. George Scott, we pitched inside. Rico, we pitched inside once in a while.
Yeah.
But, you know, it got away from him. It sailed. It wasn't a spitball, and it was just a sad state of affairs for everybody. And we felt as bad about it as the Red Sox, and of course Tony's parents and brother. You know, we understand, you know, their feeling when somebody in the family gets hurt.
He and his family, you know, when they talked about it, and Tony in his book right after his comeback mentioned that, you know, that they didn't think that Jack was intentionally throwing at his head. You know, that they were angry, of course, that he got hit, but they didn't feel like Jack was doing that. And so I know he had a ball that would well, they thought he threw a spitter once in a while, but they thought the ball just got away from him. So it wasn't like, you know, they were so angry that they thought it was intentional. And I know Jack says it wasn't either. He wasn't trying to hit him in the head, of course.
Richie Conigliaro told Petrocelli he knows the pitch was an accident now.
When this happened, absolutely, we were very, very upset with Jack Hamilton because, you know, it just happened. And we didn't have time to process it and realize what happened and, you know, what really happened. Because right away, you're thinking this guy tried to hit Tony in the head. But after the years went by and all this, and he did try to go to the hospital. Jack did try to go to the hospital right away, but Tony wasn't taking visitors, and he was very remorseful. And we all hold nothing against Jack Hamilton for that, and we all agree. And my parents also, when they were here, all agreed that it was definitely a brushback. It wasn't intentional. I believe that it ruined his career, Hamilton.
Yeah.
Hamilton was never the same. He was known for that.
Yeah. The guy who hit Tony C.
He was known for that. I believe he tried to brush him back, which is okay. But I do not believe he tried to hit him in the head. What person would ever want to hit someone in the head?
No, I don't know of any pitcher. I mean, pitcher gets banged around, he gets angry a little bit, but, you know, you got to say, wait a minute, this could be lethal. So, all right, come up and in. Sometimes the ball gets away, certainly, but we weren't sure, you know. I mean, I got up after Tony left the field. I was so angry, I almost ran out there, but I said, all right, you know, let's beat them anyway, beat him.
As far as baseball, that was over, and I have no idea how he ever got back in the batter's box.
But Tony C. did get back in the batter's box, inspiring his teammates and an entire city.
Oh, it was great. It was great for baseball, and Boston just lit up. I mean, he brought that town back to life again.
The story of an inspirational comeback is next on Fearless, the Tony C. story. And later...
He also had a band.
Yeah.
You know, and used to go sing at all the local nightclubs and things like that. And but that's just what he wanted to do. You know, he just was kind of a... You got to remember, he was a young kid. You know, he's in his early 20s, and he wanted to do it all, I guess, and he pretty much did.
Yeah, he did.
Really did.
He did.
Why don't they understand? Why lead us by the hand?
Fearless, the Tony C. story on MLB Network Radio will continue. MLB Network Radio presents Fearless, the Tony C. story.
The sound, you know, the sound when it hit that helmet in his head, in his eye, it seemed like
It was a sickening sound, and down he went. But it was a terrible, terrible sound. Well, I can still hear it.
He was a good player and had a chance to be a great player. And, injuries plague us all. If you play long enough, you're going to have something happen to you. And everybody was rooting for him to come back, and he made an amazing comeback.
Everybody was praying for him, is right. The thing I remember even more, though, than that touched me in a very emotional way was I remember the day in spring training he struck out and walked off the field. That was in Pompano Beach. Do you recall that? Struck out. That was about the fourth straight strikeout for him, and he just turned around. He walked right out the gate back to the clubhouse, and I think everybody's heart went out right there for him because we knew how much he wanted to play. We knew how good he was going to be. We knew how good he was, and yet and then he came back after that, so to speak. So it was a very emotional moment right there. But that's when I think about Tony. That's in baseball. That's the thing I always think about first.
Here are Jerry Trupiano and Rico Petroselli.
Tony Conigliaro sustained a linear fracture of the left cheekbone and a dislocated jaw with severe damage to his left retina after he was hit in the face by a Jack Hamilton pitch. Rico, did you think he'd ever return to the Red Sox lineup?
Well, I was skeptical. His eye was bad. I think it was 20/300, which was, obviously not very good. Could hardly see out of it. Was really trying to come back with one eye. I was saying, Jesus, how can he do it? And then, I was afraid that he would get hit again. And so I just wasn't sure whether he'd be able to make it. And then to see him really work hard at it. And, after a while he said, well, maybe this guy can do it. It'd be incredible.
As the comeback unfolded during that time with the Red Sox before going to the Angels, during that time, could you see dramatic improvements, small increments of improvement? What were your thoughts on that comeback process?
He came, to spring training to win to the instructional league and was told to take batting practice, and then he had some great times, where he seemed to see the ball well. He hit a few balls out of the ballpark. And then struggled again and was frustrated, man alive, back and forth. His biggest fear was that he would never play the game again, and he loved to play. So that's why I thought his desire and his courage were the keys to him coming back.
Before Tony C. tried to return as a hitter, he tried to come back as a pitcher, an experiment that did not end well, according to his youngest brother, Richie.
But then he tried to pitch.
I remember that, too.
Yeah,
yes.
So they let him go down and pitch, which was a disaster.
Yep.
You guys think you can do anything.
Oh, sure.
But pitching didn't work out. So as that turned out, he gave that up, and then they gave him another shot in 69, which he did pretty well with.
Pretty well indeed. Conigliaro hit 20 homers with 82 RBIs in 141 games in 1969 to earn Comeback Player of the Year honors. Richie Conigliaro and Rico remembered his first game back in Baltimore.
And you do remember that 69 game in Baltimore.
Never forget that game. When he made the team, he went to spring training, and he had what he said, 20/20 vision. I don't know how true that was, but all I know is that he was hitting the heck out of the ball in spring training. And so we go to Baltimore. The team is excited for him. Everybody, everybody is excited for him. Wow. What a comeback. What a comeback this would be. So we go there. We take batting practice. He's hitting it okay. And now he comes up. And he got a standing ovation from the Baltimore fans. There's a guy coming back.
Yeah.
And I think the first time up, I think he got a single. I'm not totally positive. But I think it was the second time up or even later in the game, because I think his hit won the game. Bang! He gets a hold of one, and it's a line shot into the stands, home run. I do remember that was the winning run.
Yeah, that was over Blair's head.
Remember?
Right.
And we went nuts.
Yeah.
Just like my mouth was open. I thank you, God. This was absolutely because we were all there. I mean, the family, yourselves, and you were at the hospital. We visited him in the hospital. We saw his eye just, and you remember the picture in Sports Illustrated with the black eye. It was incredible.
It's just a thrill for me, and I've known you for many, many years, but it's a thrill for me to talk to you finally after 50 years almost.
I know. That's
about
right.
this, because Rico, this is the first time you and I have really ever talked about Tony,
everything that happened.
and you were there for everything.
Tony C's comeback amazed everyone, including teammates like Mike Andrews.
You know, I'll never forget his comeback because I think we all knew it wasn't the same Tony. I mean, he was having trouble seeing. He just wasn't the same as before he got hit.
You know, he actually got, as I say, got the 20/20 again for a short while.
Right.
Then as it deteriorated, it went to 20/50, 20/100, up down to 2300. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. What courage he showed, and what a great comeback he made until, my understanding is his eye started to deteriorate again by putting the strain on it or whatever caused it. But he really made a courageous comeback.
And Conigliaro also inspired his city, according to Red Sox catcher Mike Ryan.
Oh, it was great. It was great for baseball, and Boston just lit up. I mean, he brought that town back to life again, and he did that with anything he did.
As far as any concerns about Tony C getting hit by a pitch again, Petrocelli and Richie Conigliaro discussed how the Red Sox tried to downplay those worries.
One thing we made clear to the whole league when Tony came back is if anybody knocked him down, there was going to be big trouble. All right, so big trouble. And so that was it. And I think that, in all honesty, no one really wanted to knock him down. They understood what he went through and what was, what he went through in his comeback.
I think there was just one time that I can remember. You might remember Fred Lasher. Fred Lasher either hit him or got close, and Tony charged the mound.
Yeah.
After his comeback, and I believe that's probably the only time that there was a confrontation.
I remember that too. Yeah, right. Last year, the pitcher. The pitcher the night before came close, and they asked Tony about that, and Tony says, if anybody comes close again, I'm going to go out to the mound.
Right.
Last year pitches the next day. Sure enough, goes way inside. Actually hits Tony, and here we go. Tony goes out there, and he was taking kung fu.
Karate, right?
Karate
with his kick.
With his kick, and here we go. I mean, it was. Fortunately, nobody got hurt.
Right, but everyone charged. It was like one of those things you see today.
Yeah.
But that's the really only one I remember after he got hit.
You're right.
Was
that was it. That was it. It was. We told everybody, hey. There's going to be trouble if you guys do it. You're going to hit your guy, or we're going to go at it.
I believe that most people most pitchers and teams after, as Rico said, gave the warning out after this, pretty much respected that. Yeah. And they really didn't bother him as much as any other player.
If Conigliaro's comeback in 1969 was surprising, then his performance in 1970 was downright shocking to those who believed he would never play again. Tony C reached career highs with 36 home runs and 116 RBIs. Perhaps more importantly to Conigliaro, that was the year he and his brother Billy formed two-thirds of the Red Sox outfield. Rico knew how much that meant to Tony C.
Being from Massachusetts and having their team being the Red Sox, imagine having two sons be on the team. Sal and Teresa were just absolutely thrilled. And there was an uncle, Vinny, who was very, very close to Tony and Billy, and he was thrilled. He helped them as youngsters. And I think it was important for Tony, too. Tony had gone through some struggles even before getting hits. The press was on him a little bit, for off-the-field activities, and he had Billy there, and I was there, George Scott, some of the guys that would try to be good listeners and to talk to him, but the family, this was a dream come true.
The Tony C story seemed headed for a happy ending when it took another unexpected turn. After his big 1970 season, Conigliaro was traded to the California Angels, a move that shocked Petrocelli and other Red Sox players.
Well, I heard about his trade on the radio, and I thought it was a joke. It was maybe they're talking about trades, making a trade, and Tony's name came up, but they said this was a done deal. I was absolutely in shock. I couldn't believe it. A guy, he just had the best year of his life. And to trade him, I thought he meant so much to Boston, to the Red Sox organization, even bringing people into the stands and friends, just that you want to see a local kid do well. And when he did well, I thought he would never get traded, and we really were mad at the Red Sox, at the front office people for doing this. We thought maybe they just turned on him and just couldn't understand why they would trade him. I mean, I guess they figured maybe, after the good year, this was the time to trade him, or they heard something from the doctors that no one else knew about, that the eye might have been, starting to deteriorate. We couldn't figure it out, but it was a shock, a total shock. Hearing about his being traded. It's like losing a brother.
He was so popular in Boston. Tony belonged to New England.
And Richie Conigliaro told Rico the trade away from his hometown had a huge impact on his brother.
The whole thing was so important to him because of his family.
Great point, yes.
It really was, because when he got traded to California, he lost all of his drive and ambition. Yeah. I really think if he never got traded, Rico, and he hit the 36 that year, he might have hit 46 the next year.
Yeah.
Being in California out there and all that, they thought, because of the women, he liked the women, that he'd rather have his family than the women.
Oh, absolutely. Throughout the book, it's all he talks about is the family.
Yeah, and the home cooking and all that stuff.
Sure.
So that's why he retired.
Yeah.
And his eye was deteriorating, but I think he could have lasted another 3 or 4 years.
In his only season with the Angels, Tony C. hit .222 with 4 home runs and 15 RBIs in 74 games. His major league career was effectively over.
Finally, didn't the end come when he struck out 4 times? I think, yes. I don't know, was he with the Angels then?
Angels.
Yeah, and that was,
that was it. Yeah, he knew he couldn't see. He was
I think his heart was broken then, and of course, with his comebacks and the eye deteriorating again, you could just see. And God, I don't know if it had anything to do with what ultimately happened to him, but I think his heart was kind of broken when he couldn't perform the way that he knew he should be able to, or perform at all, like you're saying, in 67. And, I also say, and with all due respect to Ken Harrelson, who had a great year the next year, and Jose Tartabull, who did a great job for us, but, that year, having Tony out of the lineup, I don't think the race would have been that close had he been healthy.
Oh, yeah. You guys came down to the last day, right?
That's right. And, with Tony in there, I don't think it would have been down to the last day. That's what an impact he would have had.
Conigliaro left the Angels after the 1971 season. He did return to the Red Sox briefly in 1975 as a designated hitter, but was forced to retire after 21 games because his eyesight had been permanently damaged.
As you could see, when he came back in 75, he could still hit, but it was a little, he still couldn't see.
It was tough. Yeah, you could see it.
He ended up hitting 166 home runs, 62 coming after his return from the injury that eventually cost him his career.
He loved life, he loved to eat, he loved girls, he just loved everything.
The story of Tony C. off the field is still ahead, and later on, Tony C., the Godfather? A true Hollywood story you will not want to miss. This is Fearless, the Tony C. story on MLB Network Radio.
I can remember watching a game in Boston on the team, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. He's the only guy I'd be watching. You just love to see him out there dancing around in right field. Not dancing like dancing, but moving, this and that. He was just someone you just watched. And that's where the people, they came and they just wanted to watch him.
MLB Network Radio presents Fearless, the Tony C. story. Here are Jerry Trupiano and Rico Petrocelli.
Yeah, he was something, I'll tell you. He was a fun guy.
As successful as Tony Conigliaro was on the field, he also made a name for himself off the field through music.
He was a pretty good entertainer. He loved to sing. because he cut those couple records. They might have not sold real good, but they were fun, and he was fun. He loved singing. He just loved music. He loved to dance. He was a beauty. It was never a dull moment. You've heard that line before, but this kid was something special, and he kept me loose, and he kept everyone else loose. There was no telling what he was going to do next, and it was fun. It was really fun.
Tony C. took his music as serious as he took his hitting, releasing a record, Playing the Field, in 1965. He even sang on several late-night talk shows and became a fixture on the Merv Griffin Show, as Rico recalls.
He had moxie. I mean, who the heck would go on Ed Sullivan and Merv Griffin and some of the other shows and sing and, not even think twice about it? I always thought that he was, the saying, you were born to be something. I always thought he was born to be a major league ball player because he loved everything about it, off and on the field. Loved to compete, loved to hit, and loved to, to be out in the public's eye, singing, be in a group. It was great. You're right. He was some kind of personality.
Richie Conigliaro said his brother was not somebody who shied away from the spotlight.
Well, what's funny about Tony is he was, a lot of people would say cocky and this and that, and, some people didn't like him because they thought he was cocky, but I'd use the word more confident than cocky. And what people don't realize is, everyone remembers Merv Griffin, but he was also on the Tonight Show, the Mike Douglas Show, and a bunch of the Steve Allen Show, all these different shows, probably about 6 or 7 different shows. As a matter of fact, he was on the Mike Douglas Show when Tiger Woods was a little kid.
Oh, when he came on, I remember
he was
that.
Putting on there. He was on the same show.
Oh,
it was amazing. But Merv Griffin and Tony got to be very good friends. Tony did sing on Merv about 8 times. 8 different times, all these different songs. Incredible. Yeah, and he just he wasn't nervous about it. And I tell you right now, he was no Frank Sinatra. Believe me. He also had a band.
Yeah.
And used to go sing at all the local nightclubs and things like that. And but that's just what he wanted to do. He just was kind of you got to remember, he was a young kid. He's in his early 20s, and he wanted to do it all, I guess, and he pretty much did.
Yeah,
he really did.
He did. Tony's singing also became a fixture on the Red Sox team bus, where he had a few partners in crime.
Remember me, him, and Mike in?
Still of the Night?
Oh, geez, yeah. Mike Ryan.
Right.
Mike's his roommate.
You guys used to sing all the time.
Yeah, Mike Killis. We always used to tell Mike, you're off key.
He was fun to be around. He had a dry sense of humor. He was just fun. He was fun. He was a fun kid. He loved life. He loved to eat. He loved girls. He just loved everything. He was a good guy.
But what about a good fella? Tony C's charisma nearly made him a star on the big screen in one of Hollywood's most iconic roles. Richie Conigliaro explains.
A guy named Al Ruddy met Tony in Los Angeles at some gathering, and actually pulled him aside and offered him the part of Michael Corleone.
No kidding.
In The Godfather.
Yeah.
He said, I want an Italian kid who's never acted before. And this is when Tony was in between. He just got traded to California.
Yeah.
And he wasn't happy. But he told him, I really love baseball too much. I'm not interested.
For Tony Conigliaro, there really was only one role he was born to play.
That was it, Rico. That was his number one, was baseball. Never mind the singing and all that. That was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But baseball is his whole life. And once he really started losing that, I think he lost a lot of everything else.
He was the perfect human being, good-looking, tall guy with great ability, and just cocky enough to be cool, And boy, he had it all going, and what a tragedy with his life the way it ended up,
His whole life, obviously from Little League until that night, was all geared to being the best you can be and trying to make it to where he was. And just out of a accident, which I believe was an accident, really pretty much ended it all. And In my opinion, it ended everything, including his life. I believe it had something to do with that, too.
After his retirement in 1975, Tony Conigliaro became a sports anchor in San Francisco, but he was always looking to return home. In early 1982, Tony C. was back in Boston to interview for a broadcasting job when he suffered a heart attack and a stroke and lapsed into a coma. His former teammate Mike Andrews thinks Conigliaro may have been putting too much pressure on himself.
Sometimes I wonder again when he had his stroke if he had come back to interview for a job with the Red Sox broadcasting on I think it was TV 38 at the time, and I just wonder sometimes did he want to come back here so bad and be a part of where he really belonged rather than San Francisco that put some extra strain on him? I don't know, but he owned Boston, he owned New England, and he would have really owned them if he'd have stayed around.
Conigliaro remained in basically a vegetative state for more than 8 years. On February 24th, 1990, Tony Conigliaro passed away. He was 45 years old.
He really only lived 37 years. Really, because he lived 8 years in a kind of a vegetative state. But,
I remember.
But those 37 years, he lived some good years.
Yeah.
For all his accomplishments, Tony Conigliaro's career usually comes down to one very simple question. What if? What if he had never gotten hit in the face by a Jack Hamilton pitch? What if he had played for the Red Sox in the 1967 World Series? What if he had never been traded to the Angels? What if he had batted behind Carl Yastrzemski for his entire career?
And so many times I think about what would have happened, over a period of 15 years had that combination been there. Could that have potentially been the best 3-4 combination or equal to any that has ever played the game? I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. Tony, we never really had that guy to back up Yaz the way that Tony did. I mean, I don't care if it was a right-handed pitcher. They never pitched around Yaz to get to Tony that I can ever remember.
It's the uncertainty that makes defining Tony C's legacy so difficult.
He was only 22 when he got hit. I mean, most people don't even really start in the majors maybe till, 23, 24? I don't know what the average age is.
Yeah, probably that age.
But by then he already had the 100 home runs.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't a 300 hitter, but he would have hit several hundred home runs for sure. I don't know. He was the fastest to 100 in history, I guess, and he'd have hit his 30 to 40 home runs a year probably for most of his career, I think.
He was definitely healthy, a 30 to 40 home run a year man every year. And if he had stayed in Fenway Park, it could have been more.
He had 36 home runs that year and did it on one eye. And you know yourself, Rico, if you throw anything from the waist down that year, I mean, he'd swing sometime and miss it a foot and a half or 2 feet.
Yeah.
But anything from the bell itself, he didn't miss. He just killed it.
Oh.
And he had 36 home runs, and I believe he drove in 118 runs that season on one eye. Now, who else is going to do that?
It's hard enough to hit a baseball with good eyes.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Never mind, as you know, never mind with a problem with your eye.
Yeah, I think he would have been a 500 home run guy, and one of the reasons is because of the DH. He would have had the opportunity to be a DH.
Career.
And he was a fearless hitter. Now, I was on deck a lot of times, hit after him, and man alive, he'd be in there, that head looking at the pitcher. Nobody could throw a fastball by him. I don't care who would throw today.
And as far as comparisons to today's young stars, such as Mike Trout and Bryce Harper, Richie Conigliaro says it's not even close.
Just check the numbers. I mean, they were fairly close, but I believe, for instance, the sophomore year for Harper, I believe he had 20 or 21 home runs this past year at 20. And that's the year Tony hit 32 and won the home run championship. He didn't hit 24 his rookie year. If you check the numbers, any of them, Machado, any of those guys haven't, they came close. It was a little nerve-wracking for a while, Some of these guys, like Harper especially. I mean, that guy Tony was like, you got to remember, 6'3", about 170 pounds. Harper looks like a damn linebacker.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's a big,
he is
strong kid. And you'd think a guy like that could challenge Tony's records, but maybe in time. I don't think he's going to reach 100 before Tony. That'd be sort of impossible. So no, really, we did think about it, but I think that's all past now.
Hawk Harrelson says in the 70 years he's been around baseball, he can think of only one person who comes close to what Tony C. accomplished early in his career.
We have some of the best-looking young players coming into baseball today that I've ever seen, and I've been in this game all apart for 7 decades. And when you get your Bryce Harpers and your Mike Trouts coming in, and a lot of other guys that are really talented, but Harper and Trout get the majority of the publicity. But these young players coming here, I don't think there's really anybody. I think the only closest comparison I could make would have to be go back a few years with Mark McGwire, who came in his rookie year, hit 49 home runs.
And don't forget the words of one of the greatest players to ever take the field.
Ted Williams put it the best. He said that Tony Conigliaro was the greatest young home run hitter he ever saw.
A career cut short by a terrible injury, a life cut short by illness, but a career and a life that has never been forgotten. When we return, extended conversations with those who knew Tony Conigliaro the best, his brother and teammates.
Fearless, the Tony C. story on MLB Network Radio will continue. We return to Fearless, the Tony C. story on MLB Network Radio. Here's Jerry Trupiano.
Reflecting on the life and career of Tony Conigliaro, Rico Petroselli sat down with Tony's brother Richie for an extended conversation.
What kind of brother was he growing up, and that you recall?
Well, the thing is, Rico, was like me being his younger brother, being like 10 years younger than him.
Mm-hmm.
It was I was just like his baby brother.
Yeah.
So when you guys went to the park, I'm sure you remember, he took me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
10 when he was 19. When he started.
That's incredible.
And he took me to the park.
Yeah.
And he took me in the clubhouse, and I got to meet you, and I got to meet Yaz and all these guys. It was just like, I didn't care about Tony. Tony was my brother.
Right.
But when I met guys like you and Yaz and all those guys, that was the biggest thrill of my life. But yeah, he took me everywhere, to spring training.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, and my parents packed all the food and did all the cooking for you guys down there and fed you up pretty good. We even brought a barber with us to cut your hair. I don't know if you remember.
Sure
Phil
do, yeah.
And it was just like an event every year. We had a real good time.
Well, he was a great player in high school. I know he and Billy. Billy went, and then, of course, you played too.
Yeah.
But when did they know that Tony had the potential to become a big leaguer?
I think he always knew in his own mind, but I think when everyone else knew was when they were touting this guy called Danny Murphy.
Oh yeah,
who was very the scouts from everywhere after this guy, and they ended up facing each other in a game.
Yeah.
And Tony was saying, "Good, send him to me." And he had a home run, a couple of doubles off this guy, and after that, I think pretty much not only our family but the scouts woke up and said, if he can hit this guy, he can pretty much hit anybody. So that's pretty much when we thought. I mean, he was a skinny guy. I mean,
I remember.
Tony, he's 165 pounds at 6'3".
Yeah. Yeah, wiry, but actually he had a perfect body for to be an athlete. It was incredible. All you guys did, you and Billy as well.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the scouts coming in to see him. They were interested, and his book, I loved it. It came out in 1970 with Jack Zanger, Seeing It Through: The Story of a Comeback. And Tony mentions that the scouts came over. And Danny Murphy, you mentioned, he got 125,000.
Yeah.
Bob Gindin got 125. Tony Horton from California,
Right, I remember Tony,
who would be Tony's roommate,
Yeah.
signed with the Red Sox for 125,000. So he was in the book. He said, he and your dad were said, all right, 125. Yeah, we could do that. The scouts came in.
Didn't turn out that way.
Didn't turn out that way. Somebody, I think they offered him 10,000. They said, you're joking?
It was like a very, very, very shocking night.
Yeah.
It really was. Because,
I know it.
I know that what happened was that the Red Sox didn't even offer the most. The Orioles did. But we're talking, I think, 20 and 25.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was it.
Finally took it, and but that had to be a big thrill. I mean, I'm thinking back myself with New York. I was from New York, and said, "Oh, it would have been nice to sign with the Yankees or the Mets, hometown." But the family must have been ecstatic when he signed with the Red Sox. Here's your hometown team.
Well, yeah, I think if it was maybe 20, the Red Sox offered, and Orioles offered 100, I don't think he would have seen Boston.
Right, yeah. Well, that's true.
Because it was that close.
Yeah.
You know, it was a no-brainer because our house was exactly 4.1 miles from the park.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's pretty close.
Yeah, you could walk there, really.
Yeah, East Boston to Fenway.
Yeah, it was.
So that was the decision for that, you know.
That was something. I remember. Well, I was talking to him and reading the book, and you know, God, Tony Horton was the big guy. The Red Sox thought he was going to be the guy in the future, you know, first baseman, maybe an outfielder, and Tony kind of came on slow. He goes to Wellsville his first year. I think, according to the book, that he didn't start out too well. You recall going there, visiting to Wellsville?
Yeah.
Nice town, huh?
Oh, it was brutal. My family, my mother, my father, and myself drove to Wellsville, which was, I don't know, just like, I don't know, it seemed like 100 hours. We drove there, and it was like you blink your eyes and you're out of the town. It was probably the most boring town. We spent one night there. We said, Tony, we love you, man. We can't take this. And we got back in the car and left.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that bad. It really was. So,
it's probably built up now, Rich. You know.
Well, maybe I'm sure it's built up now to two sets of lights instead of one.
Yeah.
But it was brutal.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he didn't start off too well, but he ended up doing fairly well. You know, hitting in the high 300
something, 364 or something like that.
But I think the main thing, Rico, was Scottsdale. Getting invited to Scottsdale was one thing, but in his opinion, and in Johnny Pesky's opinion, who happened to be our neighbor, who we got to talk to a lot, you know, because he was our neighbor, we lived on the same street, was one hit he had in Scottsdale that pretty much said, if he can do that, man, this kid's, you know, he's got to be ready.
That was the beginning of the Red Sox resurgence in bringing up the young people.
Right.
Because Tony opened the door. Mike Higgins did not, and Billy Herman, who became the manager, did not want the young guys. They liked the veteran players, whatever the reason was. They didn't like the young guys.
Right.
Tony comes in, hits 24 home runs his first year. I mean, everybody's excited, and now that opened their eyes. I mean,
well, what also amazed me about that was the 24 home runs was good, but 290 is a pretty high batting average.
And he was out for a while, too.
Well, you know, Rico, a lot of people don't understand that, you know, they say 100 home runs before a lot of guys.
Yeah.
They say this and that before a lot of guys. But if they ever went back and checked the at-bats, because he broke his wrist many times, he broke his arm, he ran into walls. There were many times that he didn't play full years.
I remember.
In those short period of time before he got hit.
He wins the home run title, 65, I think it was.
Yeah,
I mean,
32
home runs.
20 years old.
And he was great. We used to go out and eat, Rich, and you probably heard the story, too, because Tony was, the whole family could be movie stars. But we'd sit, and he'd see a girl, a pretty girl, 4 or 5 seats over, and he'd call the waiter over here, write a note to her, and say, "Oh, I'd like to meet you, have your phone number," or something like that. And the girl would look over, and sure enough.
But that's what he told me you did.
Well, no, I was married. I would never do that.
Oh, that's right. That's you were married then.
I was married. Oh, yeah.
Before you were married.
Before I was married, it's a different story. You know.
And I love your wife, and I don't blame
I know.
I don't blame you for not doing that with her.
I know. That's another story. Anyway, but no, you know, and he was, but he was so friendly. I mean, he the way he went about it, he wasn't rude or anything like that. I mean, he was a star at that time. Now he was. I'm not sure if he went on Ed Sullivan's show. He cut the record. Might have been a year or so later, a couple of years later. But in '65, the 32 home runs, the home run championship, that really solidified his belonging in the major leagues.
Well, that was amazing. He won the home run championship, and he got a $2,500 raise.
That was
$2,500.
$2,500. Oh my God!
Yeah. So I mean, he was a big shot then.
Yeah, right. Big money.
Big money. Yeah.
The comeback was incredible. After Baltimore, because he goes to New York, not New York, but Boston, and Boston, the fans were just going wild. I mean, he had what a year he had overall. I mean. I think he hit, 20 home runs?
Yeah, 20 home runs.
80 RBI.
Yeah, he had a pretty good year in '69.
And which was, just to me...
and then '70 was his best year. Yeah. And unfortunately, like I said, they traded him 36 home runs to me. I mean, you hit more than 36 home runs.
Well,
I mean, I could never believe.
Yeah.
It's just 40
home runs,
But imagine that. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Oh,
hitting
and 118 RBI, something like that.
I mean, it's just like...
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. But I wanted to ask you, during that year, the family must have been ecstatic, at him coming back. Did you guys get excited? Did you have to kind of celebrate when he got home, after hitting that first home run in Baltimore?
Yeah. I was in high school in my senior year, and I was playing. And all the fans were screaming, and they weren't screaming about my team, right? And they're all yelling, "Tony just hit a home run!" In Swampscott, Mass, where we lived.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was really something else. Yeah, we did have a celebration, after everything he'd been through.
Yeah,
it really was great.
People always ask me, what do you think Tony would have hit? You think he would have been a 500 home run guy? What do you think?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Any question about it. If you just arithmetic, simple 2 and 2 is 4.
Yeah.
And taking out the injuries, but injuries are always involved. But taking out that one injury, having the 100 at that age, say he played to 35, give him to 35.
Okay, right.
I don't think there's any question about that. I really don't.
I don't either.
And sometimes I get upset because, obviously he shouldn't be in. There's all criteria for the Hall of Fame. But the thing is, he was almost killed and injured on the field.
That's right.
Doing his job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that sometimes, bothers me. But the Red Sox have been very good to us, and I really can't complain.
Coming up, hear memories and stories from Tony Conigliaro's teammates as Fearless. The Tony C story continues on MLB Network Radio.
We return to Fearless, the Tony C story on MLB Network Radio. Here's Jerry Trupiano.
Here's an expansive look at Tony C's career through the memories of his Red Sox teammates. First, second baseman Mike Andrews.
I just have the fondest memories of Tony because, in my opinion, and I've said this forever, if I've ever seen one player that I had the opportunity to play with that was destined for the Hall of Fame, it was Tony, and certainly he has too. But I mean, Tony had it all, and he would have been in the Hall of Fame had he not, had all of everything that's happened to him along the way. But he was just a very special player. One of the most self-confidence, I think, is Rico, is something I bubbled out of him. I've never seen anybody so positive that he should get a hit every time he went to the plate as Tony did, and never thought, I don't care how tough the pitcher was. I wish he could have got up against Bob Gibson because, I mean, he just didn't give in.
No, you're right. He thought if a pitcher got him out, I mean, he thought the pitcher was lucky to get him out. I mean, he couldn't wait to get back in there.
Was he a good breaking ball hitter?
I thought he was excellent. because he looked for pitches. I mean, he just didn't go up there looking for I always went up there looking for a fastball and pray if I got a breaking ball, they hung it to me. But he would actually go up there and really in his mind figure, I'm going to look for a breaking ball. And he could. He could hit any pitch. You couldn't throw a fastball by him, and yet you could throw him a great breaking ball and he could hit it. He had such quick hands and so strong that it was just he was just special.
Was he coachable?
Tony, very. I mean, like
he loved
I
to
said,
talk hitting.
I used to look at him swing and try to do it the way he did it because he had it down. I mean, he would swing down on a fastball and hit those high, long fly balls over the left field wall. I don't know how far many of them went, but I mean, he was strong and he just swing down that ball and I think it drove Ted Williams nuts because Ted always was the swing up, but he wasn't a protege of Tony C. Tony was a Bobby Dorr guy.
Few knew Tony better than Red Sox catcher and Tony's roommate in 1967, Mike Ryan.
Mike, where'd you first meet Tony? I mean, you guys were both from Massachusetts, right? So you didn't know each other, did you? When you were playing?
I never met him. It was 1962, and we both got invited down to. He had just signed, and we both got invited down to the Instructional League in Bradenton. Mm-hmm. I had just played my second year of pro ball, and this was going to be Tony's first experience, and they wanted to get a little taste of professional baseball before his first year. So we flew down to Florida together, and that was the first time we met.
When Tony tried to coming back, he tried to come back at one point as a pitcher. You being a catcher, did he confide in you? Did he talk to you? Did he try to pick your brain about that transition? And if so, what were those conversations like?
Well, I was gone. I had got traded right after the series in '67, so I didn't see Tony again till he started this comeback of being a pitcher. And we met in Florida. I faced him down there. I talked to him a little bit before the game, but it was nothing about baseball or about pitching. We were, kind of going different ways here, and I ended up facing him that day, and he threw me two curveballs. One I fouled off, and the next one a little ground ball at third base, so he got me out.
I always thought he was born to be a major league ball player because he loved everything about it, off and on the field. Loved to compete, loved to hit, and loved to, to be out in the public's eye, singing, be in a group. It was some kind of personality.
Yeah, when we were in Bradenton, and we got a little apartment, and we just come back from the ballpark. It was a long day, and I think we went 17 innings we played that day, and I caught the whole thing, and I was beat. And it was a Friday night, and I'm just crawling into bed, and I look over, and there he is, putting the lotion on his face and with a new shirt. I said, "Where are you going?" Well, there's a high school dance right down the street here. I'm going to go down there. I said,
high school.
I said, "No, we got to get up at 7 now tomorrow." He said, "Okay." I hit the sack, and I swear it was within 2 hours. I hear all this commotion, horns blowing, banging, and screaming. And he had just come in the door, and I said, "What's going on out there?" He said, "I don't know, there's a bunch of guys out there they're blowing their horns and they're yelling something." I opened up the window, and they said, "Tell that Conigliaro guy to come on down here." And I let her. I said, "What the hell did you do?" So I go down there, and not knowing that the office had already called the cops, for all this commotion. I get down there, and they said, "Tell him to come on down here. He thinks he's going to take this town over. Those are our girls and all this." Well, he went down to that high school, and he danced with every girl in the place. And he just took over, and now finally the cops come and throw these guys, told them to take a hike, and I go upstairs, and I'm just going to air him out, and he's sound asleep.
Outfielder Ken Hawk Harrelson knew Tony as a competitor and as a teammate.
Sound with Boston came there and took Tony's place in right field. Of course, I could never take his place because Tony was something special. He really was.
He was hurt, and now you had come as a free agent. But did you hear any flack from the fans or even the media about
not at all,
replacing
Rico.
Tony?
Not at all. Not one time. Not one thing. Not one person. Was saying anything negative towards me, because they understood. Tony got hit, and unfortunately hurt badly, and I think all the thoughts were more towards him than certainly who was going to take his place or who was going to play right field, not take his place.
Yeah.
Because I said I could never do that. When I played against him, I couldn't stand him, and a lot of guys couldn't.
Yeah.
And then when I got to Boston and put that Red Sox uniform on and got to know Tony, I got to love him. A local boy, he was going to be a superstar for many years to come. He was just a terrific guy, and it was a terrific family. I think in my career, from a player standpoint, it was the greatest tragedy that I ever encountered.
Tony Conigliaro was a great baseball player on the field and a charming entertainer off of it. His character made him a hit with teammates, and his charisma made him a hero to Red Sox fans everywhere. And while his career and life both ended far too soon, anyone who saw him was left with a lifetime full of memories. Thank you for listening to Fearless, the Tony C. Story. For Rico Petroselli, I'm Jerry Trupiano.
Loving, like a limited man.
There's a drive by Conigliaro, and it is out of here. What a bomb he is. Conigliaro hits a home run. His first time to bat at Fenway Park. And then he gets a tremendous aim. What a thrill that must be for a 19-year-old boy who a year ago was playing high school baseball. Look at that smile on his face.
Like a limited man.